He may never pursue you in the way you have been wishing for, at least not while you continue doing the one thing that unknowingly makes him pull away even more. You could actually be doing it right now without realizing what your behavior is communicating to him. There is one small change in the way you respond to his distance that can create more room for an avoidant partner to move toward you than countless acts of love ever could. And no, this is not about becoming cold, acting like you do not care, or trying to play some kind of psychological game. It is much simpler than that. Once you truly understand it, you may start noticing him showing up in a different way. If you have ever lived through that confusing pattern where the more effort you put in, the farther he seemed to move, comment the word magnet below, because the pattern you have been experiencing may finally begin to make sense once you understand what is happening beneath his behavior. Before we go any deeper, if what I am saying already sounds familiar, subscribe to Avoidant Connection, because this space is all about helping you understand avoidant relationship patterns without losing yourself along the way. And if you have experienced that painful push and pull dynamic, leave magnet in the comments so I know you are here. You may also want to save this video because there is a good chance you will want to come back to this explanation later when his behavior starts feeling confusing again. Turn on your notifications too, because we are going to continue exploring the specific things avoidant men say and do when they are moving toward another period of emotional withdrawal. Now let us look at what is really happening beneath the surface, because the first assumption you need to stop making is that distance automatically means he does not care. An avoidant partner can seem detached, emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or even unusually cold without necessarily being emotionally indifferent. For him, closeness itself can trigger a feeling of internal danger, not danger in the obvious physical sense, but the kind of emotional threat that can come from feeling deeply seen, strongly needed, or responsible for someone else's emotional world. At some point earlier in his life, intimacy may have become connected with losing his freedom, losing himself, disappointment, rejection, or emotional responsibility. Maybe one caregiver was overly involved and made him feel as though there was no space for his individuality. Maybe another caregiver was emotionally unavailable and taught him that depending on people would eventually lead to disappointment. Sometimes both experiences can exist at the same time, creating an adult who truly wants connection while also becoming uncomfortable when that connection begins to feel serious. He may enjoy closeness when everything feels easy and relaxed, but when the emotional stakes become higher, his nervous system may quietly tell him that he needs to create distance. That internal alarm usually does not appear as a clear confession. He is not likely to look directly at you and say, "I am becoming overwhelmed because I care about you more than I know how to handle." Instead, you see it through his behavior. His replies may become shorter. Suddenly, he has more things to take care of. He becomes unusually practical or logical when what you really want is emotional connection. He may stop initiating conversations or begin appearing less available than he was before. And this is exactly where the cycle often becomes painful, because his withdrawal activates your natural instinct to move closer. You notice that something has changed, and naturally, you want to fix it. You send another message, ask if something is wrong, bring up the emotional distance, or search for reassurance. From your perspective, you are trying to protect the relationship. But inside an avoidant nervous system, those attempts may feel less like love and more like growing pressure. The harder you try to close the distance, the stronger his urge to create more distance can become. The cycle can start happening almost automatically. He pulls away and your anxiety rises. Your anxiety makes you want more contact, so you reach toward him. He experiences that increased contact as pressure and starts pulling back so he can regain emotional space. His withdrawal then makes you even more anxious, so you reach again, perhaps with more urgency than before. He feels even greater pressure and retreats even further. Eventually, both of you are reacting to each other instead of responding calmly to what is actually happening. From the outside, the entire pattern can seem confusing and irrational. But from an attachment perspective, it is remarkably predictable. One nervous system is trying to restore connection while the other is trying to restore independence. Neither person necessarily wants to hurt the other, yet both reactions can unintentionally strengthen the exact behavior they are most afraid of. That is why simply trying harder does not always produce more intimacy. Sometimes the effort you make to repair the connection becomes the very thing that makes real connection more difficult. Now we come to the shift that can completely change the dynamic. When he withdraws, stop automatically making yourself responsible for repairing the distance. That does not mean disappearing in order to punish him. It does not mean becoming emotionally unavailable. And it absolutely does not mean pretending that you suddenly stopped caring. It means allowing some space to exist without immediately rushing in to fill it. You stop making yourself responsible for closing every emotional gap. You stop believing that you must always be the first person to reach out, explain, reassure, reconnect, and restore everything whenever his behavior changes. Instead, you give him room to decide whether he actually wants to move toward you. That difference matters more than you may realize. An avoidant partner often needs to experience connection as something he is freely choosing rather than something he feels pressured to provide. When the pressure becomes lighter, his need to defend his independence may also become weaker. And when that defensive response starts becoming quieter, there may finally be enough room for his genuine desire for connection to come forward. Think about what happens when you stop constantly pursuing reassurance. You are no longer sending repeated signals that say, "Come back and make me feel secure." You are not forcing an emotional conversation every time he becomes quieter. You are not immediately trying to figure out what you did wrong or what suddenly changed. Instead, you allow him to naturally experience your absence. That absence can become noticeable in very ordinary moments. Maybe he realizes there is no longer a message waiting for him in the morning. Maybe he notices that you have stopped sending those small updates throughout the day. Perhaps he suddenly becomes aware that you are no longer constantly available whenever he chooses to reconnect. This does not magically manipulate him into falling in love. What it does is remove the constant pressure that has been surrounding the relationship. And once that pressure is removed, he has an opportunity to experience something different, missing you without also feeling pursued. That distinction can be extremely important for someone who has learned to associate intense closeness with a loss of freedom. But there is an important warning here. Giving someone space only works when the space is genuine. If you stop texting while secretly staring at your phone every 5 minutes, hoping he will panic and chase after you, then you have not really stepped out of the cycle. You have only changed what the chase looks like. If your silence is filled with resentment, hidden anger, or the desire to make him suffer, then the dynamic has not actually changed. What you are trying to create is much healthier than that. You are learning not to abandon yourself every time another person's behavior becomes uncertain. You are learning to manage your own emotional response instead of expecting him to immediately take responsibility for calming every uncomfortable feeling inside you. That is an entirely different mindset. You are not withholding affection in order to control him. You are creating enough emotional room for both people to make their own choices freely. And paradoxically, that kind of emotional independence can make connection feel safer for someone who becomes overwhelmed when he feels pressured. Let us make this practical, because understanding the theory is not enough. Imagine you are staring at your phone, wondering why he has suddenly become quiet. Normally you talk every day, and then he becomes distant for a couple of days. The old response might sound like, "Hey, is everything okay? We have barely talked lately." You may send that message because you genuinely care. But underneath those words, he may hear a request to explain himself and immediately restore your emotional security. Instead, try approaching the situation differently. Do not send the message simply because anxiety is telling you that you need an answer right now. Continue living your own day. Go to work. Spend time with people you care about. Exercise. Read. Focus on your responsibilities. Do something meaningful that has absolutely nothing to do with watching his behavior. Clears throat. You are not pretending that everything is perfect for his benefit. You are simply refusing to let his silence take control of your entire emotional world. Then suppose he eventually reaches out. What you do next matters. You do not have to punish him for disappearing, and you do not need to pour out every emotion you experienced while he was away. You can respond in a natural, warm way without making it obvious that you have been sitting there waiting for him to come back. That does not mean you have to hide your feelings forever or accept behavior that hurts you. It simply means you are choosing not to respond from panic. If he says hello, you can say hello. If he begins a conversation, you can take part in it. And if there is eventually something important that needs to be talked about, you can have that conversation from a calm and regulated place, instead of reacting from the immediate fear his absence created. The deeper goal is not to make him wonder where you are. The goal is to become someone whose life keeps moving, whether he is emotionally available that day or not. When that becomes real instead of something you are performing, your entire experience of the relationship begins to shift. This is where many people misunderstand what it actually means to give an avoidant partner space. It is not a strategy for withholding love until he comes chasing after you. It is not a trick meant to trigger his fear of losing you. And it should never become an excuse for accepting endless inconsistency. You are not supposed to lower your standards or convince yourself that neglect is okay simply because someone has avoidant tendencies. Instead, you are stepping away from the role of constantly pursuing someone who has temporarily stepped back. You can care deeply and still maintain boundaries. You can miss someone without reaching out every single time that feeling appears. You can feel hurt without immediately turning that hurt into an urgent emotional conversation. Most importantly, you can want a relationship without allowing that relationship to become the center of your identity. That difference is powerful because it changes the emotional message you are communicating from, "I need you to make this okay," to, "I care about you, but I am still okay within myself." There is another reason this shift can have such a strong effect. Anxious pursuit and avoidant withdrawal often strengthen each other. The more one person chases, the more the other person pulls away. The more the other person withdraws, the harder the first person tries to reconnect. Breaking that pattern requires someone to stop feeding it. You do not have to wait for him to change first. You can change your own response. Even one small interruption can change the rhythm between the two of you. And despite what many people believe, avoidant individuals can deeply appreciate emotional stability. What often overwhelms them is not stability itself, but stability combined with constant demands, monitoring, pressure, or expectations that they must immediately provide reassurance. When someone can offer warmth, while also keeping a strong sense of self, closeness can start feeling less threatening. It communicates that intimacy does not automatically mean giving up independence. That is often the emotional environment where an avoidant person has the greatest opportunity to relax instead of going into self-protection. So here is something you can practice the next time he pulls away. Resist the urge to be the person who repairs the distance first, just once. Pay attention to what starts happening inside you. You may suddenly feel a powerful need to check your phone. You might reread old conversations, searching for clues. You may begin wondering whether you said something wrong or whether he has stopped being interested. Do not criticize yourself for having those feelings. Simply notice them. That discomfort may be showing you just how deeply this pattern has become conditioned inside you. Instead of immediately acting on the urge, let the feeling rise and eventually settle on its own. Put your attention somewhere else. Go for a walk. Call a friend. Work on something important. Clean your space. Exercise. Spend time doing something that reminds you that your life is far bigger than one person's response time. You are not trying to make him miss you. You are teaching yourself that uncertainty does not have to control what you do. Eventually, the shift becomes less about whether he comes back and more about who you become when he does not immediately return. That is the part that matters most. You begin realizing that your peace does not have to rise and fall based on someone else's availability. You can want him without becoming consumed by him. You can appreciate having him in your life without making his attention the source of your self-worth. And ironically, that is often the very quality that can make someone more attractive to an avoidant partner. Beneath all the mixed signals and emotional withdrawal, many avoidant people are drawn towards someone who has a strong internal center. Someone who genuinely wants them but does not fall apart without them. Someone who can experience intimacy without demanding that the other person give up their independence. That kind of person feels different because the relationship becomes a choice instead of an emotional emergency. And when an avoidant partner experiences that kind of connection, he may slowly begin to understand that closeness does not have to mean losing himself. Let me show you a few patterns that may help you recognize what could be happening in your own relationship. One common pattern is what I would call the sudden disappearance. Everything seems to be going incredibly well. Conversations are flowing. He is affectionate, engaged, and present. He may even start making subtle comments about the future. Then, almost out of nowhere, his energy changes. He becomes more difficult to reach. Conversations get shorter. The warmth that was there seems to disappear. Sometimes there has been no argument, no obvious conflict, and no clear event that explains why the shift happened. This can occur when the relationship starts feeling more serious than he expected. For an avoidant nervous system, increased emotional significance can activate old protective patterns. Your first instinct may be to demand an explanation immediately. But before doing that, remember that he may not even have the words to explain what he is feeling. Trying to force him to explain an internal reaction that he does not fully understand himself can sometimes make him withdraw even more. Another common pattern is the hot and cold cycle. One moment he is intensely present, affectionate, attentive, and seemingly completely certain about you. You start feeling secure because his behavior finally seems to match everything you had been hoping for. Then, without warning, that intensity disappears. He becomes distant again, leaving you questioning whether you imagined the connection in the first place. Then, after enough space has passed, he returns and the warmth comes back. This can create an emotional roller coaster because every time he returns, it feels like proof that the relationship is real, while every withdrawal makes you question everything all over again. The danger is becoming attached to the relief you feel when he reconnects. You may start spending your days waiting for the next emotional high. But once you understand the pattern, you can stop treating every withdrawal like an emergency. Instead of chasing every time he steps backward, you can observe what is happening, stay grounded in yourself, and decide whether his overall pattern of behavior is actually capable of giving you the kind of relationship you deserve. The second pattern is the hot and cold cycle. And this one can be especially exhausting because you never know which version of him you are going to experience next. For several days, he may be completely engaged. He messages often, makes plans, asks about you, and seems genuinely excited to be connected. Then suddenly, his energy changes. He becomes quiet for an entire week, creates distance, and leaves you wondering what happened. Just when you begin accepting that distance, he becomes warm again, and the entire cycle starts all over. This can continue for months. What is happening underneath is an ongoing conflict between his desire for intimacy and his instinct to protect his independence. The affectionate periods can be genuine, and the distant periods can be genuine too. Neither phase tells the complete story. The biggest mistake is trying to hold on to his warmth by pursuing it even harder, because doing that can actually cause his next retreat to happen sooner. The third pattern is what I call the almost commitment. He says things that sound incredibly promising, but when the moment comes to turn those words into consistent action, something changes. Maybe he talks about introducing you to his friends someday. Maybe he mentions a vacation the two of you could take next year, or casually talks about what life might look like somewhere down the road.